Hello everyone, this is Ruslan Bailov, and you are watching the Daily Frontline Report from the Ukrainian war zone. Today I want to begin with an interesting piece of news that emerged this morning, and it may directly affect the course of the conflict. In Ukraine, one of Zelensky's closest associates, often called his wallet, a man who, according to numerous insiders, launders the president's war money, Ihor Mindych, has become the focus of prosecutors. They arrived at his residence today with an arrest request, but he managed to flee Ukraine about 10 hours before the raids, escaping to Poland. It is obvious that such an event could not have happened without the Americans' knowledge. It seems Washington has started pressing criminal charges against members of Zelensky's inner circle. Bad times are coming for him. Here's another important fact before we move to the front. Mindych runs the Firepoint Foundation, which before the war was involved in film production and collaborated with Kvartal 95, the same entertainment company where Zelensky once performed. Now this foundation has received a government contract worth more than $1 billion from the Ukrainian state. You can imagine the scale of corruption flourishing in the highest echelons of power in Kiev during this war. Now let's move to the battlefield. During the past 24 hours, there have been significant advances along several sectors of the front, even in the Sumy region. To give you perspective, more than 40 square kilometers of territory came under Russian control in just one day. But for the third consecutive day, we will start with the East grouping, since these units keep taking new settlements daily. Today, Russian forces captured two populated areas, Novoye and Sladkoye. In addition, they took full control of the village of Rybnoe. You may recall that when the troops captured Uspinovka, I mentioned that only one settlement remained in what was called the Uspinovka agglomeration, or Yanchurskaya defensive line, and that was Rybnoe. Now, just 2 days after taking Uspinovka, the troops have completed the job. The entire Yanchurskaya line of defense has been broken through, and all settlements in that belt are under Russian control. Currently, Russian units are launching a large-scale push toward Gulyaipol, intending to enter the city from the northeast, the least fortified direction. And there are already results. The fighting in Sladkoye has ended, troops have reached the outskirts of Novuspinovskoye, and judging by the current pace, the approach to Gulyaipol will happen much faster than the Ukrainian command anticipated. Initially, Kiev's military planners believed the Uspinovka defense line would hold at least until mid-December. Back in October, when Russian forces first reached the area, Ukrainian analysts predicted that the Russian army would get bogged down here for half a year because of the many villages, the river, and strong defensive works. Some even said the battle for Gulyaipol might not begin until the summer of 2026. But reality has proven them wrong. The Far Eastern Express, as the soldiers now call their advance, has broken through the entire defensive belt in barely a month and is now racing toward Gulyaipol at full speed. If the current pace continues, the East grouping will reach Gulyaipol by mid-December, and the first urban battles for the city will begin. However, in the Zaporizhzhia region, not only the East grouping achieved progress. Significant gains were also recorded southwest of the Stepnogorsk-Primorskoye sector. There, Russian forces advanced both south of Stepnogorsk and within the town itself. They secured most of the western part of the urban-type settlement, taking control of Tavricheskaya, Centralnaya, and Agrarnaya streets, as well as the entire southern part of the settlement. This is a major breakthrough, considering how long they had been stalled at the approaches. To the south of the settlement, the troops advanced 3 kilometers and 700 meters eastward, expanding their control zone near Stepovoy and Lobkovoy. The total area brought under Russian control in this sector amounts to 11.5 square kilometers. An extraordinary result for this direction. For comparison, throughout the entire previous month, meaning October, Russian forces captured only about 3 square kilometers here. Now, 11.5. Looking ahead, we can expect continued fighting for Stepnogorsk and a further deepening of the salient in that area. Moving on. There is not much to add about Pokrovsk today. The battles there are in their final stage. I believe within a week the city will be completely cleared. Meanwhile, in Myrnohrad, Russian forces are gradually crushing the remaining Ukrainian garrison. Over the past day, they advanced in the northern part of the city, about 470 meters along Mukamadiva Street, capturing a considerable number of apartment buildings. To be precise, 24 multi-story buildings are now under Russian control. The fighting continues. There are still many residential blocks remaining, and Russian aviation is striking them heavily, including with powerful FAB bombs. Yesterday, a FAB-3000 was used to destroy fortified Ukrainian positions and reduce casualties among Russian assault troops. Interestingly, even Ukrainian soldiers themselves, namely from the 79th Brigade, reported that around 2,000 Ukrainian troops are now encircled in Myrnohrad. How about that? They had a chance to withdraw a month ago, yes, with losses, but they could have escaped. Now it's too late. They cannot break out under any circumstances. The only options left are surrender or annihilation. They trapped themselves. Again, they could have left. But now, according to Ukrainian sources, about 2,000 troops are surrounded. Let's move further. The Russian army also achieved good progress near Seversk. Here, they advanced more than 2 kilometers deep, with a front width of about 3 kilometers, reaching the city's outer approaches. From their current positions, the distance to the first residential buildings is just over half a kilometer. Given that pressure from the south continues and Russian units have already entered the city from there, the tactical plan is obvious: a strike on the southern part of Seversk from both south and east. Since this area consists mainly of private houses rather than tall buildings, the assault may prove very effective, potentially cutting off the southern section of the city from Ukrainian control. For now, we simply note steady progress near Seversk, about 5 square kilometers of territory secured. Next, we move to the Kharkiv region, to the Milovka bridgehead. Everything here is unfolding exactly as we predicted back at the beginning of October, when we discussed the prospects for the autumn campaign. At that time, we said the key objective would be to straighten the front along the Dvurichanskoye line, specifically from Kamenka to Dvurichanskoye, and that is precisely what's happening now. The front between Bologovka and Stroyevka has been straightened, and 2 bridgeheads have merged into one. It is no longer just the Milovka bridgehead, it's the Milovka front section. Russian forces advanced more than 3 kilometers in depth and reached the forest belt on the northern outskirts of Dvurichanskoye. They have not yet entered the settlement itself, but their positions are only 400 meters away. So it's a matter of time before they go in. From Otradnoye, Russian units also advanced 1.5 kilometers southward along the Popova River. In total, over 12 square kilometers of territory came under Russian control in this area. And the progress in the Kharkiv region did not stop there. Russian forces also advanced on the Volchansk axis, both inside the city and beyond it. From the settlement of Tikoye, they moved along the Volchya River for 2 kilometers and 300 meters, entering the nearby forest. Part of the forest area is already under Russian control. For now, they are not forcing the river or entering the settlement of Volchanskie Khutora, which lies just across the opposite bank. The current task is to clear the forests, and that's exactly what they are doing. Within Volchansk itself, Russian forces advanced along Kharkovskaya, Ivano-Franka, Krestianskaya, and Verkhnyaya streets. ChatGPT said, "As you can see, reports from the city are coming in constantly now, and it's collapsing at a rapid pace, especially for this sector of the front. The reason is simple: all the multi-story buildings are already under Russian control. Only the private housing sector remains, and there's not much of it left to clear. Once these areas are swept, that's it, full control. The hardest work has already been done, and it's behind us. But even that wasn't the end of progress in the Kharkiv region. The Russian army also made gains on what was previously considered the deadest section of the front, west of Volchansk. Here, they advanced 1 kilometer and took control of the Sholokovo tract near the border. There's no need to overanalyze this. They entered, secured a small area, and that's all. It doesn't mean this front has suddenly come to life, but still, it's a pleasant development to note. And, as I mentioned earlier, let's move to the Sumy region. There were advances there as well. This was a major success, especially considering that for several previous months there had been almost no movement at all. Russian forces managed to retake several previously lost positions, First, in the area of Alexivka, it's important to understand that Ukrainian troops had been launching assaults there repeatedly, but Russian fighters held every single attack. Now they've expanded their zone of control both west and south of the village. In addition, on the approaches to Andreevka, Russian troops advanced 1.5 kilometers and are now just 400 meters from the northern outskirts of the settlement. There was also progress in the area of Kondratovka. In total, around 6 square kilometers of previously lost territory have been reclaimed. Altogether, over the past 24 hours, more than 45 square kilometers of land came under Russian control. 45.4 to be precise. For now, this is the most successful day of the entire month of November. During the night, Russian forces carried out strikes on targets in 5 Ukrainian regions. The attacks hit energy facilities that power Ukraine's defense industry, as well as transportation infrastructure. According to Ukraine's Foreign Minister Sybiga, the strikes once again targeted substations supplying the Khmelnytsky and Rivne nuclear power plants. Those substations had already been damaged by previous strikes. Russian forces also destroyed hydroelectric and thermal power plants along the Dnipro River, including on its left bank, and for the first time struck directly at nuclear plant substations, causing fluctuations in the electrical grid and energy shortages. If these substations are completely destroyed, Ukraine could lose up to 90% of its electricity supply. Even periodic strikes on these power nodes will force Kyiv to shut down nuclear reactors, take them offline for repairs, or restart them. A matter of days, perhaps a week, according to the Telegram channel Legitimny. The Russian aerospace forces are now clearly focusing on Ukraine's nuclear energy infrastructure. Western media outlets like the Financial Times, along with Ukrainian officials, are sounding the alarm, realizing that a total blackout is close, and with it, complete economic collapse. The publication cites, as an example, the strikes on the substations powering the Khmelnytsky and Rivne nuclear power plants. Ukraine's Foreign Minister Sybiga has demanded an urgent meeting of the IAEA and called on nuclear powers, including China and India, to influence Moscow. They've woken up only now, when it's become clear that the Kremlin can hit those substations if it decides to, just as Kyiv once did. This threatens Ukraine with a nationwide blackout, followed by heating shutdowns and railway paralysis. Up to 50% of train operations could halt across the country. It's a devastating blow to the economy, bringing hyperinflation and even the risk of future famine. At this point, Zelensky continues to escalate the infrastructure war for maximum publicity, a campaign of pure political showmanship. We've warned many times that Ukraine must prepare for a black winter. Meanwhile, in New York, tensions are rising over fears of an internal political confrontation. According to Politico, the city is preparing for a possible intervention by Trump's forces and even a takeover. After the election of the new mayor, the Democratic Socialist Zohran Mamdani, New York authorities reportedly fear that Donald Trump, who vowed to deal with Mamdani, could deploy National Guard or FBI units into the city. Alarmed by that possibility, the state governor has created a virtual war room, holding meetings with law enforcement, business leaders and activist groups to stop or at least soften any potential federal intervention, Politico reports. Trump and Mamdani have been in conflict for a long time, constantly trading accusations. Mamdani has already declared that New York will not support Trump's migrant deportation program, calling it a Trump-proof city. There's turmoil in the White House as well. Americans are blaming Trump for the decline in their standard of living. The president's political strategists are carefully studying the results of the recent U.S. elections. The main blow to the Republicans came from economic discontent, inflation, and the soaring cost of living. According to political analyst Malik Dudakov, prices for consumer goods have risen by 3 to 5% since the beginning of 2025. Prices for imported goods, especially from Europe, have skyrocketed by 30% or more, with some even doubling. At the same time, 60% of Americans blame Trump personally for failing to resolve the inflation crisis. Instead, the new tariffs he introduced have only accelerated the rise in prices, the expert wrote in his Telegram channel. The White House tries to boast that at least bread and frozen vegetable prices have fallen slightly since the previous Thanksgiving. But that's as unconvincing as Joe Biden bragging back in the summer of 2022 about ketchup prices dropping by 13 cents, Dudakov noted. Trump's threats to launch investigations against what he calls greedy supermarkets and meat factories are unlikely to stop food inflation. The real problem is America's agricultural industry, which is sinking deeper into recession, especially after losing Chinese and other markets due to the ongoing tariff wars. Farms are going bankrupt, Dudakov added. Meanwhile, Democrats are portraying Trump as a modern Marie Antoinette, hosting endless parties in the White House and building a ballroom while ordinary Americans struggle to survive. In the polls for the upcoming congressional elections, Democrats are already leading Republicans by 4 points. The disastrous economic situation now plays in favor of the Democratic Party, while the White House finds itself in a constant state of damage control and justification, the expert concluded. That's all for today's update, my friends. The situation on the front is changing by the hour, and we'll keep following every move and every decision shaping this conflict. Thank you for staying with me until the end. Your support means a lot. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, and share this video so more people can see what's really happening. Stay safe, stay informed, and I'll see you in the next report.